I still remember the exact second the orchard decided to fight back. It was 3:17 a.m. on a fog-choked September night. The kind where the moon hides behind bruised clouds and the air tastes like iron filings mixed with the ghost of last year's cider. I was on my knees between the ancient Newtown pippins, hands buried to the wrists in soil that had swallowed my grandfather's coffin long before it swallowed my dreams, when the chainsaw screamed. One clean, vicious cut through the dark, then another. My trees. My pulse. My future. Someone was carving my life into kindling. Let me pull you deeper into the before the screaming, before the blood in the dirt, when the orchard was still a cathedral, and I was its only acolyte. My name is Sage Harrow, and these 37 acres of heirloom apples clinging to the western slope of the Hood River Valley know every secret I've ever buried. I bought the place sight unseen at 26 with an inheritance my mother swore would be pissed away on fairy tales. The realtor's photos showed skeletal trees, rusted trellises, and a foreclosure sign flapping like a death flag. I saw resurrection. I saw proof that a girl raised on powdered milk, eviction notices, and the metallic tang of trailer park despair could grow something eternal. The first winter, I slept in the barn loft on a cot that smelled of mouse piss, wet hay, and the faint sweetness of forgotten fruit. Frost crawled through the gaps in the cedar siding and painted my eyelashes white. I learned the language of graft unions and frostbite, learned to read the sky the way sailors read stars, how a ring around the moon meant snow by morning, how the wind shifting west brought rain that could drown a crop in hours. I kept a notebook in my coat pocket, pages warped from sweat and cider spray, where I sketched pruning angles and whispered apologies to trees I'd wounded. By the third spring, the orchard answered. Translucent blossoms that glowed like paper lanterns at dusk, petals drifting so thick they looked like snow in April. The fruit came heavy, branches bowing like penitents. I named the rose after women who'd been told no. Rosa, Sojourner, Ada, Frida, Harriet. I pressed the cider myself in a hand-cranked mill older than Oregon statehood, the gears groaning like old men with secrets. I bottled it under a label that read Harrow's Revenant in crimson ink that bled slightly when wet. Restaurants in Portland fought for allocations. A sommelier in New York cried when she tasted the 21 Ice apple, said it tasted like forgiveness she didn't deserve. I was 29, debt-free for the first time in my life, and the orchard was finally mine. Mornings were sacred. I'd wake before the robins, before the sun even thought about rising, pull on boots crusted with yesterday's mud, and walk the aisles with a thermos of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The trees spoke in creaks and sighs. The Gravensteins told dirty jokes about the wind. The Cox's orange pippins gossiped about the deer who nibbled their lower branches. I'd run my palms over bark scarred by lightning, by deer, by my own clumsy pruning, feeling for the pulse beneath. This wasn't agriculture, it was communion. I'd bite into a ripe pink lady straight from the tree, let the juice run down my wrist like a signature, and whisper, "Thank you." The orchard never asked for anything back. My family never understood the religion. Mom, Delphine, had fled to a beige condo in Scottsdale with a man named Rick who wore golf shirts the color of antifreeze and called me the hippie behind my back. My sister Laurel flew in twice a year from Manhattan, trailing perfume and passive aggression like exhaust. Dad had vanished when I was 9, leaving behind a toolbox, a half-empty bottle of Jim Beam, and a note that said sorry in handwriting that shook. I kept the toolbox. Burned the note. The orchard became my father, my mother, my confessor. The trouble started with a text from Laurel at 2:47 a.m. Family emergency. Need the orchard October 19th. Details when you pick up. Call me. I was elbow deep in fermentation tanks. Yeast blooming like coral on the cider surface. The air so thick with sugar and alcohol you could get drunk just breathing. I ignored it. She called. I let it ring. By the third voicemail, her voice pitched high with manufactured tears, the kind she'd perfected in drama club. I was already in the truck, tires spitting gravel as I tore down the access road. The orchard house sat at the crown of the hill, a craftsman bungalow grandpa built in 1938 with Douglas fir he milled himself, the porch sagging like an old man's smile. Laurel's rental BMW looked obscene in the driveway, white and gleaming like a tooth about to bite. Mom's Prius huddled beside it, embarrassed. Inside, the kitchen table was buried under mood boards, fabric swatches, and a 3D rendering on Laurel's laptop that made my orchard look like a Disney fever dream. Laurel stood at the center, hair in a chignon sharp enough to slice bread, gesturing like a conductor. Picture this: ceremony in the Rosa Parks row at sunset, Mount Hood catching fire behind the arbor. Reception in the barn, Edison bulbs, farm tables, signature cocktail with your cider. Hashtag Laurel weds Jasper at Harrow's Revenant. Vogue already expressed interest. Condé Nast Traveler wants a feature. Mom clapped like a seal on caffeine. Jasper, her fiancé, a venture capitalist who'd made his first million shorting mortgage-backed securities in 2008, and never let anyone forget it, nodded along, thumbs dancing over his phone like he was closing a deal. I laughed so hard cider came out my nose. You're planning a wedding in my orchard without asking me? Laurel didn't flinch. We're telling you now. It's perfect branding, rustic luxury, farm-to-table authenticity. Your story sells the fantasy. Mom, one day, Sage. For family. Think of the exposure. Jasper, without looking up, will compensate you for lost revenue. 5 figures. I left before I put my fist through the laptop. The drive back down the hill felt like falling off a cliff I'd built myself. That night I found the first fracture in the facade. An email from a Portland event designer named Cassidy, confirming site visit tomorrow 9 a.m. for Laurel Vale wedding at Harrow's Revenant Orchard. $10,000 deposit paid via wire from J. Whitlock. I never authorized a deposit. I never even met Cassidy. I drove to the orchard at dawn, boots crunching frostbitten grass, and waited by the gate with a shotgun across my arms. Not loaded, just punctuation. Cassidy arrived in a Sprinter van with 2 assistants, a drone, and a clipboard thick enough to stop a bullet. I met them with the barrel pointed at the sky. Me, turn around. Cassidy, voice like cotton candy melting in the rain. But the contract. Your sister said you were swamped with harvest but greenlit everything. She sent a signed PDF. I took the clipboard. My signature stared back at me, loopier than mine, the S in Sage swooping like a drunk swan. I dot my eyes with tiny apples. This one had a heart. Meath Forge. I watched them leave, tires spinning in the gravel, then walked the rows until my legs gave out. The trees looked betrayed. I pressed my forehead to the trunk of a Gravenstein and whispered, I'm sorry. The invitations arrived 3 days later. Heavy cotton paper, gold foil, my orchard illustrated in watercolor so lush it looked edible. Inside. Laurel Elizabeth Vale and Jasper Hawthorne Whitlock request the honor of your presence among the ancient apples of Harrow's Revenant. October 19th for 30 p.m. Dress, garden elegance. No mention of me. Just a QR code linking to a wedding website with a countdown clock, a registry at Bergdorf's, and a photo of Laurel in a veil posing beneath my arbor like she'd grown the grapes herself. I called the stationer in Seattle. Order placed by Laurel Vale. Authorized by Sage Harrow. 500 units. Expedited shipping. My signature again. Perfect this time. Down to the apple dot. Next came the florist. 20,000 in seasonal dahlias, quince branches, and smilax to drape every branch like a jungle. Then the lighting designer. 40,000 feet of fairy lights, uplighting for the trees. A custom monogram gobo projected onto the barn. Then the caterer. Plated 5-course dinner for 300, featuring my cider as the welcome drink, paired with a foie gras torchon that made my stomach turn. I met my lawyer Jonah in Hood River at a diner that smelled of bacon grease, burnt coffee, and broken dreams. He spread the documents across the table like autopsy photos, contracts, invoices, forged signatures, wire transfers. Jonah. They've committed fraud, trespass, tortious interference, agricultural vandalism in the making. You could own their condos, their cars, their souls. Me. I don't want their souls. I want my orchard back. Jonah. Then set terms. Make it hurt enough that they feel it in their bone marrow. I texted Laurel at 2:14 a.m., the cider house glowing around me like a womb. October 19th is yours. $45,000 venue fee. Insurance naming me indemnified. Guest list capped at 175, pre-approved by me. $20,000 refundable deposit by Friday. Or I sue for every forged signature. Post the security footage of you cutting my trees, and burn the invitations in the fire pit on TikTok Live. She responded with a single emoji middle finger. Friday came and went. No deposit. No response. Saturday, I changed the gate code to 0926, Grandpa's birthday. Installed 6 cameras with night vision, motion sensors, and cloud backup. Hired 3 off-duty deputies, Rico, Lena, and Marcus, who'd helped evacuate during the 21 Eagle Creek fire when I opened the orchard as a staging ground for helicopters and weary firefighters. They owed me. I cashed in. Sunday, Laurel showed up alone in a cashmere coat the color of spoiled cream, boots that had never seen mud. You're being dramatic. It's one day. Me, you're being criminal. Leave. She cried. Real tears or crocodile, impossible to tell under the porch light. It's my wedding, Sage. The one day I get to be the center of the universe. You've had the orchard for years. Share. Me. I shared my childhood. You took the last Pop-Tart and told Mom I ate it. This is different. She left. The deposit arrived Monday, $65,000 total, wired from Jasper's account. Contract signed in triplicate. Insurance policy attached, issued by a broker in the Caymans with a name like a Bond villain. I should have known the devil was in the fine print. I was too tired to read it. Harvest swallowed me whole. I worked 18-hour days, hands stained purple from crushing, back screaming from hauling 100-pound bins. The orchard gave and gave, 20 tons of perfect fruit, enough to pay off the new stainless steel press and bankroll next year's rootstock grafts. I slept in the barn loft, woke to the smell of fermentation and possibility, the low hum of yeast like a lullaby. The cider from the early pickings was already singing, bright acid, honeyed mid-palate, a finish that lingered like a kiss you didn't want to end. October 18th, for 47 a.m. Rico radioed from the gate, voice tight. Ma'am, we've got a convoy. Catering trucks, florists, a flatbed with a marble bar. They're unloading. I sprinted barefoot across the frost, breath pluming like dragon fire, the cold biting my soles like punishment. The North Block, my Sojourner Truth Row, was already staked out with neon survey flags. A crew of 30 hammered tent poles into the soil where my best trees grew. The thuds echoing like gunshots. Me. Who authorized this? Laurel, clipboard in hand, hair still perfect at 5 a.m. Addendum C. Reasonable expansion for guest comfort and safety. Signed yesterday by you. I flipped to Addendum C. My signature, dated October 17th. I'd been in the cider house since 6 a.m. October 17th. Sleeves rolled, arms sticky. With pectin, hair tied back with a piece of baling twine. Me. That's not my handwriting. That's not even my pen. Laurel smiled like a shark scenting blood. Tell it to the judge. The caterer's already prepping. Mom appeared from behind a van, clutching Jasper's arm like a life raft. RSVPs hit 512. We couldn't say no to the governor's daughter, the Blumenthal heir, the Food Network host. 512. During peak harvest. My insurance capped at 200. My heart capped at 0. I felt the orchard bleed. I smelled it. Sap and crushed apples and the metallic tang of fear. October 19th, 5:12 a.m. I stood on the barn roof with a bullhorn and a thermos of coffee gone cold. The sky the color of a healing bruise. Headlights crawled up the ridge like a funeral procession for my sanity. A serpent of red taillights winding through the trees. 5:28 a.m. Lena radioed. They cut the chain. 75 cars inside and counting. Someone's got bolt cutters and a death wish. I climbed down, boots skidding on dew-slick ladders, the rungs cold enough to burn. The Sojourner Row was a war zone. Banquet tables sawing into rootstock. A mixologist muddling sage directly on my irrigation lines, the plastic cracking under his muddler. A drone overhead. Hashtag LaurelWeds Jasper live streaming to 80k followers, the comments scrolling like ticker tape. Iconic, goals, rustic chic AF. Laurel in her dress, silk the color of spoiled milk, veil snagged on a low branch like a surrender flag, diamonds flashing as she shrieked directions. Jasper live streaming from the bed of a pickup, caption, when your sister-in-law's orchard is straight out of a Pinterest board. I climbed onto the flatbed of my own truck, bullhorn crackling to life. This is private property. Vacate immediately or face arrest for trespass, vandalism, and fraud. A groomsman in a linen suit mooned me. Someone started a conga line through the Ada row, heels punching holes in the soft earth. A child in a flower crown picked a wormy apple, bit into rot and wailed. A bartender poured my cider into copper mugs like it was tap water. Marcus waded in, cuffs gleaming under the string lights someone had already hung. Rico blocked the gate with his ram, tires squealing as more cars tried to push through. Lena called for backup, her voice calm as a surgeon's. Laurel charged me, veil trailing like a ghost, train dragging through the mud. You can't do this. The string quartet's here. The officiant flew in from Sedona. We have a dove release. Me. You forged my name. You destroyed my crop. You turned my orchard into a circus. This ends now. She swung. Connected. My cheek split open, warm copper flood, the taste of pennies and rage. I didn't swing back. I pressed record on 3 cameras, the red lights blinking like angry eyes. By 7 a.m., the meadow was a graveyard of abandoned Louboutins, crushed dahlias and shattered illusions. 8 sheriff's vehicles, lights flashing like a disco for the damned. 2 ambulances, bridesmaid with a broken wrist from fleeing in stilettos, groomsmen with alcohol poisoning from chugging my cider straight from the tank. The governor's daughter live-streaming her meltdown from the back of a patrol car, mascara rivers down her cheeks. A dove, confused, white, and shitting on a tablecloth, perched in a Gravenstein and cooed like it was judging us all. Laurel sobbed into Jasper's chest, veil shredded, dress streaked with cider and dirt. He was on the phone with Crisis PR, voice cracking. No, I said contain the narrative, not delete the internet. Mom cornered me by the cider press, voice shredded to whispers. She's your sister, Sage. Your blood. Me. She ceased being that when she killed my trees. I pointed to the Sojourner row, branches snapped like wishbones, fruit pulped under tent poles, sap bleeding slow and amber. Estimated loss. $120,000 in crop, $40,000 in infrastructure, $1 million in brand damage when the footage hit Twitter. Mom whispered, "We'll pay. We'll fix it." Me. You can't afford my forgiveness. And the orchard doesn't do second chances. The lawsuit was surgical. Forgery. Criminal trespass. Agricultural vandalism. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge, a woman with eyes like winter steel, awarded me $350,000 in damages, $200,000 in punitives and attorney fees. Laurel's trust fund gone. Jasper ghosted before the caterer's bill cleared, leaving a voicemail that said, "This isn't the vibe I signed up for." Mom sold the Scottsdale condo and moved into a studio with Rick, who left when the money did, taking the golf clubs and the flat screen. I replanted the Sojourner row with Liberty rootstock, resistant to fire blight, scab, and betrayal. Named the new trees No, Never, Mine. The cider from that harvest, the fruit that survived the trampling, won double gold in San Francisco, a metal heavy enough to anchor a ship. I bottled a special cuvee from the crushed apples under the tables, the ones that bled into the soil. Called it Boundary Waters. Sold out in 6 hours at $150 a bottle. People said it tasted like justice. I still walk the orchard at dusk. The trees don't forgive. They scar over and keep growing, thicker bark, deeper roots. The new grafts are already throwing shoots, green as defiance. I bite into a fresh Liberty, let the juice run down my chin, and whisper, "We made it." Some call it revenge. I call it the first season the orchard belonged entirely to itself, and to me. So tell me, if the people who were supposed to prune you, water you, protect you from the frost, instead took a chainsaw to your heartwood and danced in the splinters, would you forgive? Drop your story below. I read every root, every scar, every drop of sap you spilled to survive.